Straight from the Avenue of Fashion and powered by a good Cakes and Bakes twice-baked brioche, this is a super Detroity episode of Your Daily Detroit for Wednesday, May 8th, 2019. I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays, working through the haze of a red velvet cupcake. Sven, let's do this real quick before the sugar rush runs out. Today was a good day for Detroit's Avenue of Fashion. The neighborhood was at one time home to Motown legend Marvin Gaye and has weathered the ups and downs of Detroit's fortunes. On Wednesday, a three-phase streetscape project kicked off on Livernois between 8 Mile and Margarita Street, which is just south of 7 Mile. A poorly designed median will be removed. Crews will also add turn lanes and bike lanes, and they'll widen the sidewalk to 24 feet. That'll allow for cafe seating and streetscaping. A big change is reducing traffic on Livernois to just one lane in each direction. That'll lower speeds and encourage more foot traffic. Studies show that slowing down cars can boost commerce and property values, creating more of a neighborhood feel. Ferndale did the same thing in its downtown nearly 20 years ago, and the results of that have been positive. The bike lanes here will be sidewalk level instead of in the road and protected from traffic by parallel parking spaces. The turn lane will make it easier for residents in nearby neighborhoods to get in and out. This is being paid for by a $125 million bond program that will also fund similar work in 7 other commercial corridors this year. Here's Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan.
This is something that we've been waiting for a long time. We need to bring back the commercial districts in our neighborhoods. We're getting people to move back into the neighborhoods. They want to be able to shop locally, and way too much money is leaving the city. And so we have a vision for rebuilding the Livernois corridor. It was once a great avenue of fashion, and I think it's going to be a great commercial corridor again.
Another person excited about the street improvements is entrepreneur Rufus Bartell. He owns a variety of businesses and properties along Livernois, including Simply Casual Clothing.
Well, I think the main thing is to make it more merchant-friendly and more tourism-friendly. And people forget that we need local dollars, but we need regional and national dollars as well. And so from a merchant's perspective, I think that it's going to be very good. From a pedestrian and general public perspective, it'll create a sense of place. It'll be like an introduction to the neighborhood. And so we want people to be able to really enjoy the amenities. So if a person has a 13 or 14-year-old at home that wants to ride their bike, there's not a dedicated lane where they can do that safely. And I think that'll add to that. And plus, we all can use some exercise.
The Avenue of Fashion is part of the family for the Bartells. Rufus is also the uncle to former Detroit Lion Ron Bartell, who's part of a planned $4.6 million in private investment. Rufus wants to push development in the city forward, focused on what residents and visitors need.
We're betting big on neighborhood development. Not on this corridor, but we're looking at neighborhoods differently in terms of what amenities do neighborhoods need and what amenities do neighborhoods are really longing for. And to be able to fill that need, there can be a great impact not only to be able to survive and make it sustainable, but again, more amenities. Our neighborhood needs more amenities.
The businesses will remain open during construction along the corridor, but that's not all. Down the street at 7 in Livernois, the $8.3 million B. Siegel Detroit project is underway. Curb Detroit reports that it'll be ready in August and will start pre-leasing apartments soon. So the future of the Avenue of Fashion? Right now, it looks pretty bright.
And that's good, Jer, because during our aforementioned walk to Good Cakes and Bakes along the sidewalk, some of those sidewalks are in pretty rough shape today.
There are parts where they've just thrown asphalt right over the sidewalk.
Yeah, like hot black, like the kind that they use to patch potholes and stuff, and it looks terrible.
And another spot where we walked by a bus stop, the benches were actually kicked out into the street, and somebody had knocked down the bus signs. It needs work.
Yeah, and I think removing the median from the middle of Livernois is going to be popular too. That was a Kwame Kilpatrick era addition that I don't think anybody liked, right? I mean, all of a sudden you had to start doing Michigan lefts on Livernois of all places, and business owners hated it, said that it negatively affected their sales and everything.
And on top of that, that median was ridiculously small, so it was really hard to do a Michigan left. As somebody who drives through there, your back end of your car, just a regular old passenger car, is basically sticking out when you're trying to turn over there. It's crazy.
The office of Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel tells the Detroit Free Press it's looking into the fundraising activities of a nonprofit tied to Mayor Mike Duggan.
To be honest, it's all the reporters wanted to talk about at the event today on Livernois.
Make Your Date is a nonprofit that aims to prevent preterm births in Detroit through education and access to medical caregivers and services. The Detroit Office of Inspector General has been investigating whether the nonprofit got preferential treatment from Duggan and the city, which the Freep reported directed more than $350,000 in federal grants to it and ordered a city-led fundraising effort on its behalf. Duggan has been closely tied to Make Your Date's director, Sonia Hassan, who's a physician at Wayne State University. Duggan's wife, Lori Maher, filed for divorce from the mayor last week. Wayne State has said it took over the nonprofit shortly after it launched in 2014 and that the organization is dormant and inactive. At the event on Livernois today, Duggan said Hassan has taken no fundraising money and nor has Wayne State.
If somebody wanted to write that we had an agreement with Wayne State to help pregnant moms bring their children to term, that'd have been a totally appropriate story. My issue is they've intentionally confused us and tried to make it look like the money went to a nonprofit. And I will tell you, when all is said and done, everybody here will know no dollar ever went to the nonprofit. These free press stories are false.
That's a pretty serious allegation the mayor is making, Sven. Also, I note the lawyer for Hassan has reportedly threatened the Freep with a defamation and libel lawsuit.
Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, I don't know how serious they are. That's a very, tall hurdle to clear. The press, it's very difficult to prove defamation and lawsuit against a media outlet.
Can I also just say, and maybe it's just me, and I don't know if you think this, but this story feels like really confusing to me. Even when the first version of this came out in the Freep, they've been following this. Not saying that the work isn't good, but I have been kind of confused and I can't quite pin how much of this really sticks and how much of this is perfect for Star Magazine, you know?
It's partly, I think Duggan seems to be answering certain questions that nobody's asking and not answering questions that are on everybody's mind. But also Wayne State hasn't, they could do a huge service and come out and clarify what this is all about, because they're saying this charity or this nonprofit has taken in $1.5 million over time, but yet it's inactive and dormant. Somebody needs to come, and if there's really nothing here, they need to prove that. Otherwise, this has the markings of, there's some smoke here.
Well, we'll link to the report on Daily Detroit, and consider that, to anyone involved in this, consider that a standing invitation to come on the show. Let's switch gears to cars. Sven, you recently visited Ford's offices in Dearborn for a rundown on some new customer experience stuff they're working on. So what's all that about?
Yeah, so Ford had a bunch of reporters by to talk about some of their new initiatives, which they've been working on for I think about a year or so now. In fact, they said that they have basically doubled their spending on customer experience programs recently. They named Elena Ford, who is Henry Ford's great-great-granddaughter, as their chief customer experience officer last fall. And customer experience at a company like Ford, Ford's a huge company, so this is a really wide-ranging effort.
So are we talking about the car buying process?
Yeah, everything. This touches the dealers, the retail side, the service technicians that work out of the dealerships. It involves new technologies and new call centers. This is partly an acknowledgement that the times are changing for automakers and that customer buying habits are going through a radical revolution. They trotted out an interesting statistic. The number of visits, average visits that consumers make to dealerships has dropped from 4 to 1. So in other words, customers are doing all of their shopping and comparing and everything online nowadays, and they're visiting dealers only to do test drives and to sign the paperwork and, drive away with the cars, because frankly, people have just basically been saying that they don't enjoy the dealership experience anymore.
Well, and I read on one of my favorite blogs, Autoblog, that there is this dislike of the car shopping experience. Lots of people just don't seem to like buying a car in general. They feel like it's a really tough process. So this seems like a good place to spend some money. What are some of the highlights of this?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that they're doing, and I'll just run through a few of the highlights. Ford has introduced a new rewards program through its Ford Pass, which is its mobile app, its mobile application, in which when you buy a Ford vehicle or lease a new Ford, you can earn points that you can use for free maintenance, roadside service, things like that. They're also opening a new customer call center in Houston. Now they're using like a new CRM technology. They're getting rid of like the traditional phone trees. And so now when you call in there, you'll be assigned a real living, breathing person who they say will stay with you on the call from the beginning until the end, until your issue is resolved, which is a huge change for, a giant company. And, everybody knows the unpleasantness of dealing with phone trees, right? Press 1.
Yeah, they're very annoying. And just for context for the non-corporate folks, that would be customer relationship management software, right?
Exactly, yes. So some other things they're doing, they're piloting, this is a limited pilot, a new Ford mobile service van program. So they're taking, these would be the Ford Transit or Transit Connect, commercial vans that they make, and filling them with equipment. So service technicians can actually come to you. You can schedule an appointment and they can come to your house or your office or wherever you want them to do it and change your oil for you, or put on new brake pads, or rotate your tires, or fix a flat, or whatever.
I really like that. That seems like a lot more white glove service, especially with how much cars are costing nowadays. It seems like that's a really nice addition.
Right, exactly. So we mentioned dealerships as a big component of this. They're doing some interesting things there too. They're introducing this new kind of, they're calling it the Ford Signature Dealership, which is kind of like a branding and design standard that they're starting to open up across the country. I think they've got like 100 or so open right now. They're borrowing a lot of elements. Like a lot of the elements actually, frankly, reminded me of like things that you would find in Apple stores. So instead of like going into like private offices to talk with the dealer to, hammer out, ask about cars and sign paperwork and stuff, you're meeting in public. Like you sit at a large table in a waiting area and there's flat screens that are showing you, videos of some of their products and stuff, but also like information about their pricing for not just vehicles, but some of the services. Like here's what it would cost to get a tire rotation here or change new tires or whatever. And lots of, doing things out in public and trying to make them more inviting and staging private areas, much more consumer focused sort of showroom concepts. Another thing, this is really interesting. They opened last week what they're calling a smart lab retail concept in Brussels, Belgium. It's in a shopping mall, and Ford says this was based on an idea that they saw that a Ford dealer had done in Italy. And it's essentially, so what this dealer is doing, this is run through a dealer, not through Ford itself, although they're having some involvement. They're using essentially the lobby of a shopping mall. So think about like Somerset. Like instead of having a store in the mall, like you see Tesla, or I think theirs is closed now, but it'll be out in the lobby. And so they'll have Ford vehicles out there. Ford says this is like basically like a low pressure sales environment. It's it's designed to be a very accessible place. People can come sort of peruse the cars if they're, they have a free moment. They're free to, touch. There's information on kiosks about the vehicles. They can get quotes on the vehicles from salespeople who will be staffing it and sort of loosely paying attention. They can even do test drives outside the mall if they want. And Ford says that this has been shown through the dealer in Italy to increase sales leads for them.
You're speaking of Italy. One of the things that this reminds me of, recently there was a pop-up in the Fisher building for Vespa, and they put the Vespas right there out there in the lobby.
Right,
you could
exactly.
grab them, you could do whatever if you wanted to get a test. That was really nice. Like I would have never interacted with that whole situation if it wasn't right there in front of me and so friendly. So I think this is a great idea.
Yeah, it's definitely a new concept for sort of like, the staid automakers that have been around, in Ford's case, for 115 years.
So this is going to be a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort. Why are they doing this?
Well, Ford says that, the company has acknowledged that all of its customer experience efforts had been too fractured, sort of disconnected from the whole. They use the term siloed. So, one department didn't know what the other department was doing. So this is partly an effort to kind of try to integrate them all and standardize them and across the company. Again, it's a huge company, right? Customer experience, I would also add, is a major thing now in corporate America. I mean, every big company is at least paying some lip service to customer experience, right? So Ford said it has, it spent time benchmarking other companies that are considered sort of the gold standard in customer experience, like Apple, Starbucks, USAA, which is the insurance provider for military veterans, and Delta, the airline operator. It's also based some of the stuff on work that Lincoln, its luxury division, has been doing for a few years now. Don't forget, the backstory here also, Ford stock has been kind of struggling and hovering around that $10 mark and below for a few years now. It's slightly above $10. I just checked earlier, but the company's been under lots of pressure. Investors they feel like they don't have a clear sense of where the company's going under Jim Hackett, the current CEO. And, as the whole industry is trying to grapple with the trends toward autonomous, self-driving vehicles and electric vehicles and everything, they feel like they don't have a clear sense of what Ford's plan is. And Ford just says that boosting customer loyalty, which it aims to do through customer experience, is the best way for it to succeed in a rapidly changing industry.
I got to admit, over the last couple of years, it's kind of fun to watch Ford again and see like the local automakers do some stuff that's interesting to follow again.
Well, the other thing about Ford, too, is that they've been particularly bold among companies in basically saying we're doing away with all of our sedans. The Focus is already, they're done making that. The Fusion's sticking around for another year or two. Fiesta's on its way out, too. But they're going, they're putting all their money and all their chips down on SUVs and trucks. So, they're certainly bold. I mean, it's a risky move in some ways, maybe, but we'll see how it goes. But I think focusing on customer experience is smart for any company, frankly.
Wanted to share a quick piece of news, late breaking as we were recording the podcast. I-75 between I-696 and Square Lake Road, 14 miles in both directions, will be closed this weekend from Friday evening to super early Monday morning. So plan accordingly. It'll probably be a mess. Just wanted you to know.
The nonprofit group Friends of the Rouge needs volunteers to help with the annual cleanup of the Rouge River. This year's Rouge Rescue event takes place on Saturday, May 18th. Volunteers are needed to help remove trash and invasive plants, maintain land and water trails, and help plant native wildflowers. Volunteers at last year's event cleared the equivalent of 24 pickup trucks worth of debris and about 78 pickup trucks full of invasive plants. They also helped plant some 2,000 native plants and trees. There are no restrictions on ages, but volunteers should expect to get dirty and possibly wet. It's a river, after all. There are cleanup sites this year at 40 locations in 17 different communities, with additional work days scheduled at certain locations through late June. We'll have a link where you can find more information and register to volunteer on dailydetroit.com.
Two quick things out the door. Today is the 60th anniversary of none other than Little Caesars. The franchise pizza chain, whatever you may think of their owner's downtown development decisions, is undeniably successful. They're the third largest pizza purveyor in the nation and employs 200,000 people worldwide. And here's another staggering stat. They do an estimated $4 billion in revenue every year. So we talk about these guys all the time and we think, $5 hot and ready pizza, but this is like a super large business.
I'm going to go to my calculator right now and divide $4 billion by $5. Also wanted to mention that Governor Gretchen Whitmer has ordered flags be flown at half-staff until May 14th in honor of the recently deceased judge and civil rights icon Damon J. Keith. We had a great conversation with historian Ken Coleman on Keith's legacy on the show recently. We'll link to that in the show notes.
So thanks to our Patreon supporters, our listeners, and everyone else who makes the show possible.
With that, I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
So, Sven?
Yeah.
Did a little quick math. 4 million, 4 billion. So 4 billion divided by 5, assuming that it's all based on hot and readies, that's 800 million pizzas.
That's a lot of hot and readies.